Welcome to First Level Training. Firearms Education Center, here with another podcast. Today we're talking about what mass media is not telling you. And mass media is in it for the ratings. That's how they make their money. They're not really giving a crap about whether their information is A, correct, or whether it's sensationalized, either right wing or left wing. But it does matter who owns that particular station, depending on their point of view. So, here, if you were to regularly watch and read the news, both locally and nationally, you might take note that there are tragic acts of violence and hatred happening all around us, and you might start to question if crime has risen, and if things have possibly gotten worse over the years. It seems as if every headline printed in the newspapers or discussed on television today is inundated with pessimism and riddled with sensationalism, and many reporters have been criticized and exposed for exaggerating facts. More often than not, news stories have become overly hyped for the simple fact that ratings and readership may rise if people find stories interesting. And it's quite possibly if those stories fit a certain agenda. So I think that is the case, again, for what we just talked about in the title of this, is mass media is really just a corporation to get viewers.
For their advertisers.
And they're not there to give you correct information or even information that you like or dislike. It's all about ratings and reviews and getting people to watch their story, no matter how correct or incorrect it may be. Undoubtedly, it has become more and more difficult to decipher what is truth and what is a bias. And it seems that the media is no longer telling the news and is now just selling it. They're not telling it, they're selling it. And you can see that by the shift of different reporters in different shows now. Like now they have Nora O'Donnell. She took over Channel 2 Nightly News. Only because she's got good ratings when she was on the morning show. So now they want to boost the ratings in the evening, so they move that particular person to that show. And now the format has changed. If you notice, if you go on Channel 2, Channel 4, and Channel 7 at the same time between 6:30 and 7 o'clock, they all have the same stories running at the same time by the same types of commentators. Okay? Nora's like just moved it a little bit so she's not like everybody else for the ratings. Okay? And a lot of her stories are told, no matter how horrific they are, with like a smirk on her face. I don't know if it's because how much she's getting paid, the millions of dollars she's getting paid per year, or whether she finds that her way of portraying the news is somehow better or one-upsman than the other guys that are out there, because now she's in this new time slot.
Yeah, one thing I'll say about like media is like when I was in high school, I was a member of this group called the Youth Voice Collaborative, and it was based on media literacy and media advocacy, and it was teaching us as youths to be very critical of the images that are played in front of our eyes, right? Pay attention to the words that are used. A 14-year-old black kid that shoots somebody, and in the streets or something, you might see, the report say something like, young man murders innocent bystander, right? But then you'll see, let's say, the white kid from the suburbs that goes and rapes some girl. You might see something, it be described as local teen, they won't use the same, they won't use the word thug, right? And so, like, pay attention to, like, your broadcasts, and you start realizing that, like, even the word thug, a thug is a criminal, right? That's what it is, right? Historically,
it is, yeah.
Right? But it seems that the word thug is reserved primarily for persons of color, right? So pay attention to that. Like think about that for a second, right? Like, you know, you're getting a news report, and whether it was the black kid that killed somebody or the white kid that raped somebody, they're both atrocious crimes. They're both committed by a thug, somebody who breaks the law, right? So, you know, because we gloss over this stuff a lot of the time, because, you know, we are inundated with different ads and television shows and series and, you know, YouTube videos, and so we're getting just bombarded. I think I read a study once where it said that the average person sees something like 3,000 ads a day.
It's crazy. There was 13 ads in between. I want to say again, this Channel 2's news broadcast right at 6:45. You know, they've gotten through the big headlines, and then they go to like local news and stuff like that, or things that just aren't as important or as sensationalized. 13 ads in between that one portion of the show and the last portion of the show, which takes up 5 minutes of this 1.5 hour segment. Okay, so where are you going with that? You know, you're cutting down on the news, which is a news show, and you're just showing me commercials for freaking drugs and insurance and all this other kind of cars. It's nuts. Getting back to what you were saying, the picture you texted me of where the caption was 2 police officers with rifles, okay? Another would say 2 people with assault weapons, you know, but because there were police officers carrying AR-15s,
They were rifles.
the AR-15s were rifles.
Right.
If there was anybody else carrying AR-15s, they would be assault weapons. And some of the media's tactics are very subliminal. As they're talking about something, you'll see the picture come up of an AR behind them, when in fact the shooting wasn't done with a rifle at all. And it gives you that subliminal message that, oh, there's that bad gun again, you know, and it continues to ingrain in us this falseness, this false fact of what media, again,
you know,
is telling us.
I remember growing up being told, you know, there's 3 sides to every story: his side, her side, and the truth, right? So when you look at, I don't care if you watch Fox or you watch CNN or you watch ABC, NBC, CBS, Bloomberg, I don't care what you watch, right? They all have, you know, none of them are publicly funded, right? Aside from PBS, right? And so they depend on advertiser dollars in order to stay afloat. You know, I mean, that's why there's, you know, that's why commercials, like, think about this, right? Like, I think it was, you know, the reason soap operas are called soap operas is because
selling detergent.
They were selling detergent. That's why they're called soap operas, right? And so we have to remember, kind of take a step back and say, you know, it's not like CNN works for us.
Right, and remember, the show is not there for the show. The show is there because the advertisers need a vehicle to advertise their product.
Right.
So, and this is the same thing with the news. The people telling you the news are there not for the news. They're there so their advertisers can sell a product. And the product that they're selling a lot of times is bullshit. You know what I mean?
And the other thing too, I think, is that, and not to like interrupt, but I think there's a big difference between like a journalist and a pundit, right? You know, I think, you know, journalists are the folks that really try to dig deep to try to uncover the truth and really find out what is going on, right? They're doing, I feel that the journalist is doing a service to the American people by really digging into stuff. Pundits are people that have opinions. You know what I'm saying? And so now the difficulty lies in the fact that we live in a time where there's a 24-hour news cycle, right? Back in the day, you know, it took a while for the news to get to you. You know what I mean? Now it's instant, no matter where you turn.
And that actually gave the journalist time to compile information that was correct. Now it's just get it out there, get it out there, get it out there.
Right.
Because everyone wants to be, oh, we're the first one.
Breaking news.
Breaking news. We're the first one to, you know, give you this news firsthand. And I think that really is the downfall of modern media. They try to compete with each other when that's not, news is not about competition. It's about getting the facts and making a point, because it's not just journalism and reporting the news a lot of the times. A lot of the time is trying to come up with a solution for the horrific and horrible things that we do to each other as humans.
Yeah, it's there to, to hopefully cause some sort of discussion, have people ask questions, even get you upset enough to take some sort of action, be it protesting, writing your city council or your senator, your congressmen or women, but it's not, what's scary is that I feel that these images that we're being bombarded with, I think are like an accelerant. You know what I mean? We already
feeling the flames.
So like the U.S. is already on fire, right? And now we're just pouring gasoline on this shit all over again and just making it bigger than what it needs to be.
And no matter what topic it is, it could be gun violence, it could be racism, it could be anything.
Anything. It could be the climate. Like
climate change.
I think that's like one of my biggest pet peeves is like when people try to have a discussion about climate change. Like the hottest summer recorded. We had our hottest July of all time. Like shit's changing. You know what I'm saying? So there shouldn't be a discussion on whether or not it's happening. It should be like, okay, guys, we see this happening. What are we going to do about it?
And scientists have proven it. And of course, a lot of people think they're smarter than the smartest people on the planet, and they decide either not to believe it or
it's not going to affect me somehow.
It's not going to affect me, or they disavow any knowledge of that being fact when scientists, that's all they work with is fact. And interesting enough, according to the PEW research, violent crime in the U.S. has fallen sharply over the past quarter century. Okay, the two most commonly cited sources of crime statistics in the U.S. both show that substantial decline in violent crime and crime rate since it peaked in the early 1990s. For example, using the FBI numbers, violent crime in America fell by 49% between the years of 1993 and 2017. 49%.
Interesting.
Okay, and now people are going to say, "Oh, it's more violent out there than it's ever been." Well, is it really? Or is it just portrayed that way by the media? You might think by the media's take on this that, violent crime is up, and if you walk out your door, you're probably going to get shot.
And that's how they make it seem.
Yeah, and it creates paranoia. It creates people with false information, which is a lot of the false information about guns, about gun laws, and the gun laws that they're trying to put through. It's just misinformation, but people take news and news media as fact. So these people really need to start taking a stand as professionals and start researching the crap they're doling out, because people are buying it. You may just want to be selling suds, but you're selling a lot worse than that. You're selling false ideas, false facts.
Well, what I find interesting, which is something that like I've seen articles and people, saying the same thing, that violent crime has been decreasing over the last 40, 50 years or whatever, right? By the same token, though, mass incarceration has been growing. So we think about that. Like, no one mentions this, but we're living in a time where violent crime is declining, yet incarceration is going up. Right? So we have to take a solid look at ourselves and say, why is that? You know what I mean? And I have my own personal beliefs as to why that is. It's not really the scope of the conversation, so I'll leave that out. But if you're going to report the truth. You know what I mean? Like, yes, we have a problem in the United States. No one is going to disagree with that. There is a problem here. People are on these extremes, nobody seems to want to kind of come together and say, hey, wait a second, what's your experience like? And we have to have the hard conversation, multi-generationally, like we need to have these conversations, because if we're not having these conversations and we're not holding people accountable, all we're doing is just spinning our wheels, not going anywhere, and living in fear.
And according to a Gallup poll from November 2014, despite major declines in the nation's violent and crime rate, a majority of Americans believe there is more crime in the U.S. than ever, okay? In fact, 63% believe crime is up, even though crime statistics released by the FBI in November of 2014, the same month and year, revealed that the estimate number of violent crimes decreased by 4.4% when compared to the previous year. But let me take that a step further. Here's some stats. The number of mass shootings across the U.S. thus far in 2019 have outpaced the number of days in the year, according to the Gun Violence Research Group. This puts 2019 on pace for the first year since 2016 with an average of more than one mass shootings per day. As of September 1st, which was the 244th day of the year, there had been 283 mass shootings in the U.S., according to data from this Gun Violence Archive, GVA, which tracks every mass shooting in the country. The GVA defines a mass shooting as any incident in which at least 4 people were shot, excluding the shooter, okay? The total of 283 mass shootings includes several high-profile mass casualty attacks, 2 of which happened in the same 24-hour period of each other, which was the drive-by shooting spree in Odessa and Midland, Texas on August 31st, and 7 people were killed and 24 wounded, and the shooting in a historic district of Dayton, Ohio on August 4th, with 9 people killed and 27 people injured, okay? The shooting at Walmart in El Paso, Texas on August 3rd with 22 people killed and at least 24 wounded was the deadliest shooting of the year. A shooting at a municipal building in Virginia Beach on May 31st where a former city employee killed 12 people and wounded 4. Okay, the last time the mass shooting toll topped the days of the year was in 2016, which had 382 mass shootings, the most in any year since the Gun Violence Archive started keeping track. The past 2 years came close with 346 mass shootings in 2017 and 340 in 2018. And to quote this particular article, violent crimes have decreased by 4.4%, which is correct if you look at the statistics from 2016, 17, and 18. So what is the media telling you? The media is telling you mass shootings are up, violent crime is up, you better,
Take the guns away.
You better put your guns away because it's not safe out there.
Yeah. Something interesting for me is this right here, right? This is my jewel. This is what I use to get off of cigarettes, and 400 some odd cases of people getting sick from vaping, whether it's because of a Juul or vape juice or whatever, right? And seven deaths, right? Immediately the White House is saying we have to do something about this. Well, I commend I don't say this lightly, but I commend the White House for wanting to take it, to take this seriously, right?
I think they just want another feather in their hat.
But my thing is this:
it's easier to deal with than gun control.
Yeah, exactly. Because it's not like we've had 208. Oh wait, it is. We did have 283 shootings. Mm-hmm. So we have to do something, right? And I feel that a lot of times, it's sad that some people are ingesting things into their bodies that are causing them to fall ill. And and I feel for them. I do, because nobody has to go through pain or suffering or loss, in my opinion, right? No one should have to deal with that. We all do. But how is it that became the headlines over the last week? When we have a serious issue in the U.S. with regards to mass shootings, specifically mass shootings, right? Not gun violence, because I think one of the things people like to bring up is, look at Chicago. Well, as somebody who grew up in the hood, I'll tell you this, gun violence is no stranger to the hood. It's not. What is different, though, is that pardon my French, but when shit popped off in the hood, right, and shootings occurred, it was, somebody going after somebody else specific
One
way,
person.
right? It was a target.
Mhm.
It was, this man wronged me because of X, Y, and Z, and payback's coming. Okay. Mass shootings are different. Mass shootings are going after a bunch of people. Random people. You know what I'm saying? Like
people that don't deserve it.
driving hundreds of miles to a garlic festival so you can pull out your rifle and mow down as many people as you can is
or to a Walmart and do the same thing, whether it's racially motivated or not.
Right.
The whole mass shooting thing is, if it was taken as seriously as vaping, there may have been some more legislation and some more proper avenues to take care of it, but it doesn't seem that's happening.
And you know, the other thing I find interesting is when in the conversations about gun control or gun violence, it seems like no one talk. You know, they talk about mandatory or voluntary gun buybacks. And you'll fly. I'm not, you know what I mean? Like, it's not. You know, they talk about background checks, enhanced background checks, right? They talk about red flag laws. But you know what they don't talk about? Licensing. Licensing. I mean, look, I'm originally from Boston, and in the state of Massachusetts, it's damn near impossible. You know, it's very difficult to get a firearm. Okay? It's even more difficult for a concealed carry. You know, you'd have to be...
Same thing as in New Jersey. It's like 1% of the population can concealed carry.
You know what I mean? Like, you'd need to be like an armed security officer, for example. You know what I mean? Or law enforcement, or, you know, or check off very specific boxes. But licensing is not a terrible idea. Like, if you have a program in place nationally, you know, that says, okay, from this point forward, because we can't do anything about everyone in the past.
Right.
You're just gonna make a mess, but you can't say, hey, you know what? Our laws are gonna be the same across all 50 states, so that even law-abiding citizens traveling aren't gonna be breaking the law because, you know, it's locked away, but it's, you know, the magazine is not separate or whatever. You know, like little stuff like that.
And that's the thing, too, because law-abiding people are getting beat the hell up.
Yeah.
And the laws do not involve criminals. What laws do you have, what criminals do you know that abide by the law?
For real.
They don't. So why make laws that the criminals are not going to abide by that affects law-abiding citizens?
Right. You know what I mean? Like, these signs, gun-free zone, why advertise that? Like, seriously, like, it should, you know, all you're doing is, let's say I'm a legal, you know, like, let me think about this for a second, right? Let's say I have a concealed carry permit, right? I'm legal, right? I'm licensed. Let's say it's a state that has licensing and everything.
Right.
And I drop my kid off on the way to school, and I enter a gun-free zone, and I get pulled over because I forgot to use my turn signal, and I inform the officer, as I'm supposed to, because I have a concealed carry, right? Officer, I'd like to inform you that I do have a firearm on my person. You know what I'm saying? Am I going to be charged for having a gun in a gun-free zone? Like, are you really going to are you really going to jeopardize my professional livelihood because... My life. Because I, you know, am following the law and I just happen to drive through somewhere?
Right.
And get pulled over? Like, that's... Like, do people not think of this shit?
Yeah. And signs do not make a law, but signs do influence people.
Oh, yeah.
And I think it's dangerous to tell someone of certain specific, how do I put this, criminals, basically, that, hey, there's no guns over here, criminals. You know, put up a sign. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
You know, the fact that I don't see any signs saying well-armed, well-trained staff in this facility. If you harm anyone, you'll be shot. I don't see signs like that. I'd like to, especially around our schools, even if it weren't true. Do you think an active shooter would pass by that sign and go like, I got it covered? I don't think so, because signs say a lot, and it doesn't take a lot for somebody to just get the thought in their head of gun-free zone. Well, no resistance there.
Right.
That's my target.
Yeah. Look, I remember years ago when I lived in Orlando. I think it was 2012. I worked for a company, and one of our clients was the NBA, and we did something for the NBA during All-Star Weekend. And I remember the amount of security for All-Star Weekend was unlike the security that I would see at a normal game. And it was because of all of the VIPs that were there all of a sudden, right? Like all of a sudden, I was, we were doing radio equipment, so I had to go and set up radio equipment for multiple locations for the NBA, right? And I remember the first 3 days, it was like a week-long setup, and like the first 3 days, I was able to just drive into the convention center, set everything up. I was on the roof, I checked in and all of that stuff, right? Did what I was supposed to do, had my credentials, right? And for the first 3 days, there were no issue. Day 4, I come to bring, the radios that they requested, and all of a sudden, I'm met by, sheriffs, and there's helicopters above, right? And they had bomb-sniffing dogs sniffing the car and the whole nine, which I thought, hey, fantastic. You want to make sure this place is safe. Mm-hmm. Great. What happened to the 3 days prior?
Yeah.
How many boxes did I move in there? Yeah. Right? And so, like, people, how safe are you? How safe are you? You know what I mean? Like, yeah, like they told me, during the game, I can watch it from anywhere in the stadium because I had passes, right? Right. But they said you might not want to go to the catwalk. I said, well, why not? I said, that's where the snipers are going to be. All right. Like, at a basketball game, right? And I'm thinking, why? Well, because this celebrity's going to be there, and that celebrity's. And so it's like, so when there's famous people around, we want to make sure that we keep them as safe as possible. But when it's just another basketball
workers,
game,
the guy setting up. Yeah.
It's whatever, and like that always sat really wrong with me. It's like, either keep the security the way it is or step it up, but kind of do it all across the board. Don't, like people like to cherry pick, I think, a lot of times. Yeah. This event is important, so we're really going to step it up over here. Like I've gone to the Port Authority a number of times, and you'll see cops walking around with their ARs. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And like it makes me feel a little uncomfortable. But okay, mass transit, right? New York City, hundreds of thousands of people probably going through that place every day, if not millions of people. Yeah. I get it. You know what I mean? I get it. That makes sense. Armed security in front of a school. Mm-hmm. Makes sense to me.
I'd like to see more of that.
You know what I mean? So, but it's...
something like that. If nothing else, one armed security guard while kids are walking into school, that one kid that has a hard-on for killing as many people, he may decide not to do it that day. And that may be the end of it, because he sees one armed guard in the front of the school as kids are entering the school. And maybe that's all it takes, is a little presence. But certainly not gun-free zone signs, which is ridiculous. Mm-hmm. And certainly not the advent of these so-called laws that people think are going to protect them. No. You know what I mean? Like background checks, universal background checks, and magazine capacity bans.
And mandatory buybacks.
And mandatory buybacks and such. You know what? They're just fooling you. It's media hype. It's not going to get anybody anywhere as far as gun violence. No. So,
educate.
It's no wonder the public perception of crime is at odds with the data. And ultimately, an even more damaging offense than the sensationalism the mass media is incorporating may be the information they are intentionally leaving out. So getting back to what this video is all about, this podcast is all about, less crime, more hype, what the mass media isn't telling you. And what they're not telling you is you have to educate yourself, okay? You can't go by the media to tell you how much crime there is, what gun violence is in your neighborhood, because they're just selling soap. So,
you know what? It's funny you say that, because a meme I read a while back, and the reason I even bring it up is because I feel like people are sheep sometimes. Mm-hmm. And so this meme I saw once said, how do you get a sheep to pay you $1,000.
No.
Release a new iPhone, right? And like for me, it's almost like what it is now. It's like, you know, we're gonna jam this down your throat, right? Like I love my daughter. I have to say this. She wants to get the new iPhone 11. Awesome phone. Awesome phone. Has every single feature that Android phones have had for the last 2-3 years. Right?
But what are they selling with that?
Oh, they're selling, you know, a vibe or like, you know, I'm cool if I have this. You know what I mean? And that's what I'm saying. Like we all fall into this thing, right? Where we fall into just kind of being sheep. You know, we expect to be taken care of. We expect that things are going to go our way. We expect that, you know, I'm an American, and no matter where I go, everybody's going to know that I'm an American, and that, you know, I'm going to be respected because of it. Well, newsflash, like a lot of people don't like us. A lot of people don't like us, and not for anything, you know. And this, we might get some flack for me saying this, but like, if I was paying attention to what was going on in the U.S. and I was living outside of the U.S., I would be fearful to even send my kids to come study here. You know what I mean? Even though the data shows us that violent crime has gone down,
That's not what they're.
that's not what the media is telling, right? What are they seeing? Oh, active shootings everywhere. Governments literally around the world are warning their citizens to
Stay away from America.
make sure you really want to go over there because it's so dangerous.
Right.
We say the same thing about some of these other countries.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? And so, like, nobody's perfect. We all have our own personal issues, but collectively, as a nation, we have a big issue on our hands, which is, what are we going to do about these mass shootings? You know, what are we going to do about, like, why is it when they talk about gun violence, they don't talk about the fact that the majority of people that die at the hands of a handgun is suicide?
Right.
Why don't they mention that? Because it doesn't fit the agenda. You know, more people die by suicide with a handgun than getting shot, you know, than an active shooter.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like that's scary, dude.
It is. Absolutely.
So something to think about.
Until next time, guys, First Level Training, Firearms Education Center. Thanks for watching, and there'll be plenty more to come. We appreciate you checking us out, and if you'd like to support our channel, please do so on Patreon. You can see us on YouTube and Facebook and Twitter and all sorts of other stuff. We'll be launching our new website just in a few days, so check that out.
We'll leave the links in the comments below.
And thanks again for watching.